would like to introduce our moderator for this session, Daniel Lanyon, who is the editor-in-chief of AltFi, which is the world's leading publication on fintech, and also take the time to note some of the speakers for this panel. Not all of whom were, we had some last-minute changes, as you know, throughout the day. We've been some cancellations due to, global events, but we have with us Rodney Schwartz from Clearly So. We have with us Rakesh Gupta, who is the CEO of Save Invest. We have Ayo Obina, who can introduce himself, recently left a Nigerian bank and is now consulting. Charles Robertson, the global economist for Renaissance Capital, as well is joining the panel, and I will turn over to Daniel Lanyon and to the speakers to introduce themselves as well. Thank you so much. Do you use that speaker, or do you want to use this one? Yeah.
I'll use that.
Welcome, everybody. Fantastic to be here, and special welcome, obviously, to anyone who's flown in, and well done for making it. My name is Daniel Lanyon, editor-in-chief of AltFi. For those of you who don't know us, we write about fintech, which, if it's a new phrase, financial technology, and the best way I describe it is startups who are disrupting finance. So startups looking to take away market share from big banks, sometimes decades or even hundreds of years old. Here in London, it's obviously been a big thing. Last year, there was about $48.5 billion US invested into fintech companies. Most of that is all venture capital money. I think there's some pretty big success stories, and obviously globally, there's some fantastic trends going on, including in Africa. So I think before we move on to questions, it'd be great to just hear from each panelist and an introduction to themselves and their company or organization. Do you want to start?
Yeah, that's fine. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ayo Obina. I've done finance all my life, basically worked 25 years thereabouts in Nigerian banks and worked with startups, governments, worked across treasury, investment banking, and what have you. Recently, in the last 1 month thereabouts, I've started a consulting firm called CAS, where we're into management consulting, financial advisory, and principal investment partnership. Basically, we're looking to improving the quality of life all around us and trying to see how we could get a whole lot of disruption in place and fresh creation so that people could lead. We think that we're not going to go anywhere per se to improving the quality of life if you keep doing things the way it's always been done. So the basic idea is to think through unusual ideas, and we induce you to do that and then constructively create the capacities to bring your unusual ideas to life so that you can win. And we intend to disrupt around the entire processes, whether it's in medicine, science, finance, and what have you, basically to try and support the cause of the many. Thank you very much.
I had a slideshow that I was going to show you, so I want you to imagine these were really great slides. And I'll try to remember what's on them, because I didn't write down what I was going to say, so bear with me. My name is Rod Schwartz, and I'm Chief Executive and founder of Clearly So, which is an impact investment bank, and I wanted to talk to you, and I will talk for a few minutes, about 5 minutes, about impact investment and why it's relevant in Africa. And I'll talk a little bit about us, but also give you some examples of some organizations that we've backed. So first, I'll talk about impact investing, a little bit about Clearly So, and some examples. Impact investing is now $500 billion around the world. It almost doubled last year, and impact investing is something that I think can address a lot of the issues in society today. It's growing because some of the mainstream large financial companies are now trying to get into it. either because they believe in it or because they want to appear to believe in it. But both reasons are actually helpful because the money is starting to flow. It's also true that a lot of companies, which are impact companies, are starting to do well and prosper. So people think this isn't just a way to do the right thing, it's also a way to actually have a successful business you invest in. And actually, sub-Saharan Africa is now the third largest category of impact investment, so it's extremely relevant to this audience. It's right behind Europe and the United States. I know I sound like I'm American, but I've been living in Europe now for 32 years, so I think of myself as a European. Clearly So itself, I'll explain briefly what we do. We are what we call an impact investment bank. So that means we do everything an investment bank does. Typically, we don't wear suits, but today I wore a suit because I'm at a conference. And we simply connect capital with enterprises, people who are often called social entrepreneurs or impact entrepreneurs, people who are trying to build businesses that are going to have a positive impact on society, socially, ethically, or environmentally, but at the same time, they're legitimate, viable businesses that can actually earn investors a lot of money. We're approached by anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 businesses every year, and we select about 40 or 50 that we work with every year, and we've raised more money in Europe than any other impact investment bank. Of course, there aren't that many impact investment banks. We've also been active in Africa, either directly or also through companies that are headquartered in Europe but operate in Africa. We raise that money for three different types of organizations: smaller early-stage businesses, later-stage businesses that are mature and are also generating impact, and also impact investment funds. So those are funds that are dedicated to on-invest in impactful companies. And we raise that money from high-net-worth individuals, family offices, foundations, pension funds, large banks, etc. And we're just a middleman. That's simply put what we do. I'll give you 4 examples, which I think are quite interesting and really tell the story better than what I've just said up till now, if I can remember which were on the slides. I think the first was a company called Aduna, A-D-U-N-A. Aduna takes the baobab fruit grown in West Africa and converts it into a sort of health bar that gets sold here in London for big prices. And actually, it is quite terrific in training the women who collect these baobab fruits in West Africa and sharing the profits with them. So there's an element of fair trade to what they do. I mean, they're just a consumer brand, but people in London pay very high prices for these baobab products and moringa products. So that's one example, and we've backed them now through several stages of investment. The next company, as I think I recall, is a company called Steamaco. Steam, ACO, Steamaco, is involved in really the electric grid in Africa, and that's a company we helped raise, I think, about 600,000 pounds for some years ago. Quite a lot of the things we do are in the energy sector. The third company, very interesting company, is a Dutch company called And Wider, ampersand Wider, W-I-D-E-R. And what they do is they have a sophisticated technology which checks the supply chains of large Western companies to make sure that they're operating in an ethical way. And there's lots of money now going into that, and they have really quite a clever technology for doing that. And the fourth company that we're working on currently, we're helping them to raise $50 million, so a large raise, is a company called Lumos, L-U-M-O-S. Some of you may know it. And they're quite active in installing solar energy all across Africa. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Yeah, do you want to go next?
I'm Vinod Taylor. I'm a UK-based person here, and I've been in banking finance industry for over 45 years. Started my career in retail banking, international finance, investment banking, private banking, and then setting up boutique investment banks in Singapore, UK as well. Currently, I am a non-executive on a real estate developer here in London, as well as a director of a boutique investment bank which focuses on emerging markets. Predominantly, we've done a lot of work with raising capital for Indian corporates, listed Indian corporates, non-listed Indian corporates. That's what I have. Africa is very dear to me because I was born in Uganda. I came here in '72 as one of the refugees, but the terminology of refugee is different from then to now. And this country has been tremendous. It's been a great foster motherland for me. It's a home. And I look to Africa and I understand Africa. So the thing that I have now gone to do is working with churches in Ghana to do agriculture and not agribusiness, because culture is very, very important in our human being, as our culture is predominantly, if there's no culture, there is nothing left. So to preserve the culture, I'm working with churches to add value to the agriculture sector. In addition to that, also looking to teach them how to recycle plastic to make plastic homes, which can be used and can be served as well. At the same time, you clean up the environment. Thank you.
I'm Charlie Robertson. I'm Chief Economist at Renaissance Capital. So we're a bank that raises money for companies, either in the bond market or the equity market. We do that across Africa and also Eastern Europe. Got offices in Lagos and Kenya for about 15 years. Reluctantly got an office in Johannesburg as well, but we didn't think South Africa was going to be quite as cool as the rest of Africa, so it took us a few years longer to achieve that. We've still got offices in Lagos and Kenya. They are fundamental to the quality of the research that I then put out as the economist, which goes to all the guys who might invest in the equity markets or the bond markets in Africa. And those clients then, fortunately, have voted me the best analyst for Frontier for the last 4 years. Not because I get everything right, I think just because they at least understand what I'm saying. I don't wrap it up in too many formulas. We did a book called The Fastest Billion about 8-9 years ago, talking about why the 21st century is going to be Africa's century. So, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back again, and now I'll speak more about what do we do. And I've launched my own venture, which is almost 18-odd months back, and we are a global boutique advisory company. We work on both strategic and the financial advisory side. We do fund and capital raising. That's what our specialty is, and that's what we do. And that's what we understand the best, possibly. So we work with some of the big global institutions on the fund side, and then we also work with the family office, because my background has been over 2 decades of investment banking, dealing with some of the big names across the world, and trying to build it up. My personal experience was largely when I was asked to set up an Africa desk for one of the most influential family in the world. And when I traveled across Africa and try to understand their geographies, the language, the economics, and the demographics, I find it to be quite challenging. But as the time progressed, we have done some of the most impactful investment there, which led me to be on the World Bank on the ESG and the impact side. So today I'm working with World Bank on the impact side, also on the Africa part. And apart from having our own setup in Johannesburg, where we are trying to build up with the countries in terms of both Africa Development Bank, which is our one of our partner to work along, and we are looking forward to a complete new Africa. Thank you.
Great. Well, I think obviously we've got a very broad topic to discuss. I think it'd be great to, before we dive into lots of different areas, Charlie, I think you had sort of an interesting sort of opening gambit, almost from a sort of macro perspective, about what could be a great sort of starting point for regulators. Sure.
I mean, I've been spending the last 5 to 10 years now trying to understand why is finance so expensive in Africa. Why are the interest rates so high? Comes to issuing a Eurobond, the government wants to borrow dollars from the States. It costs Nigeria 10% on their longest dated bond today versus 1% in America. If it comes to the return on equity that foreign investors usually want, how much return do they need each year? How much profit? They're looking for 20 to 30% in Africa. I mean, how many places can you hope to achieve that? It's extremely hard, which means some of them don't come and invest. And it's not just the foreigners. It's not just they've got some misperception about African risk. it's a domestic African story as well. If I go and try and borrow money from a Kenyan bank or a Zambian bank, Nigerian bank, they're likely to charge me, what, 20% to borrow money? How can I invest, say, in electricity to give Africa, Nigeria, which badly needs it, a lot more electricity, if every year I'm paying 20% interest on my debt? I can't. But I can if I'm in China. It's 2%. 1 year borrowing rate in China, 2%. Nigeria, it's 10 to 15 at least, even for the government. 10 to 15 for Kenya. 10 to 15 or more for Zambia. But it's not just an African story being much more expensive interest rates than Asia. It's also within Africa, you've got dramatically low interest rates. I can borrow at 2% in Africa for 1 year if I live in Morocco or if I live in Mauritius. So the question I've been trying to ask for the last 10 years is why? Why can Morocco borrow at 2% for 1 year, and in Nigeria it costs me double-digit rates? And the Moroccans said, you mustn't forget we stole a lot of money from Spain when they threw us out in 1495. Now, that was an interesting explanation, which I took semi-seriously for a while, but I discovered that that actually wasn't the reason. The reason that Morocco can borrow at 2%, this is going to sound odd, but the first time I heard anything about this issue, I thought the question was very odd too. I was at a conference with the Vice President of Nigeria, and a woman stands up and says, what are you going to do about the fertility rate in Nigeria? And I looked at this questioner and I thought, luckily I didn't have to answer the question. This is the Vice President. I thought she was a nutter. Very rude thoughts going through my mind, I'm sorry. She was actually spot on that this is the fundamental issue for Nigeria. And not just Nigeria, a whole host of African countries. It's the fertility rate. Why does this matter? Because what China showed in the 1970s, an IMF study shows that over half the rise in savings in China in the last 35 years came about because they got the fertility rate, the number of kids per woman, down below 3. That's what drove Chinese savings up. Chinese are not natural savers any more than anybody else is. They just don't have very many children. And we've seen this across all countries. Countries that have 6 kids, where women have 6 kids, it turns out if you've got 6 kids, you've got no savings. Who knew? Kids are your savings when you've got 6 kids. They're your pension, they're your unemployment benefit, they're the ones who might look after you. When you have 2 to 3 kids, this is a crucial number, when you've got 2 to 3 kids, they become your investment. And you actually have spare cash left over in your pocket. That cash goes into the bank. The banks then have a whole chunk of cash to lend out. Who do they lend it to? Well, they lend it to the government, they lend it to the private sector, they lend it to support investment. And when you've got a big banking system, you have low interest rates. The lowest interest rates in the world right now are about 0% in real terms. That means after you've taken out inflation. The lowest interest rates in the world are in the biggest banking systems. So you go to a country like Nigeria or Zambia, and your banking system is less than 20% of GDP. The total deposits are smaller than a fifth of the size of the economy. In China, it's 200% of GDP. They've got twice as much money as their economic output each year. They've got so much money, the Chinese, now, they don't know what to do with it. So they're lending it to everybody. Belt and Road, they're lending it to African infrastructure projects, they're lending it perhaps to build British electricity nuclear power plants. They've got stacks of money because they got the fertility rate below 3 in the 1970s. And that was before the one-child policy, by the way. So what this tells me is that the reason interest rates are high in much of Africa is that the fertility rate is still high. In Nigeria, it's between 5 to 6. Angola, the same. DRC, the same. The countries where the fertility rate is about to drop quite significantly in the next 10 years are the ones that are going to do best, quickest. And they are Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, and Egypt, among others. As I've said already, Morocco, Tunisia have already got very low fertility rates, just 2 kids per woman. These other countries are going to go below 3 children per woman in about 2030. And as a result, their interest rates will fall. As a result, they'll come to the external markets, the dollar funding markets, and they will get a better interest rate as well because they're borrowing less from the markets. So what I've seen, what's caused this, what do you do to get the fertility rate down, to try and improve this access to finance? Partly educating girls. This is a really big deal. Girls need to stay at school until they're 16, and if they get an education too, firstly, they don't start having kids at 13, 14, and secondly, once they've got an education, there's better prospects for them to get a job. Secondly, you just tell people it's a good thing to do. I've got a colleague who used to live in Indonesia in the 1990s, and they had posters saying 2 kids good in Indonesia. And it worked. Indonesia's fertility rate's now around 2. Interest rates are low in Indonesia relative to sub-Saharan Africa. And the third thing you do is you distribute a whole load of condoms and the pill and all sorts of contraceptives. I had a chat to the Vice President of Nigeria about this about 2 weeks ago in Abuja. He said, we can't do this in Nigeria. It's a religious issue. The northern guys are going to think that this is just a southern Christian conspiracy to reduce the number of kids that Muslim families are having. I said, it's not a religious issue. You go to Morocco, very Islamic, I promise you, 2 kids per woman. Pakistan, it's about 3 to 4, but coming below 3. Bangladesh, it's under 2. They don't even meet their replacement rate. All Muslim nations. So it's not a religious issue, it's just an issue which will make a huge difference to Africa over the next 10 to 20 years. And so more important, I think, than anything else that can happen in finance is that.
Very interesting. Would anybody like to tell a little bit?
Yeah, because thank you for that. That's actually very interesting, and it's a different way of looking at things entirely. I don't think that's ever really crossed my mind. Fertility rate and interest rate, that's a big one. However, I tend to see the logic is drawing, but I don't totally buy it. And the reason the Vice President of Nigeria gave him perhaps was part of it, but really not the thing. This is exactly what I think. Access to funding and cost of funding. Funding is a function of what is the cost to you. Okay? So basically what you're doing in finance is you're going to the surplus unit, taking money and giving it to the deficit unit. So the cost at which you get out the funds is what will determine this. What bankers do is basically what's called a spread. So if I can get money at 1%, then I can give it out at 6%, saying my cost of administration is 5%. If my cost is 15%, then I probably will be giving it at 20%. There's really no magic to this. And where does this come from? One, I think financial inclusion is a big thing. So you're still doing a whole lot of brick and mortar banking, where people are still going into branches to go and save money and stuff like that. So in all the rural areas and what have you, that still does not exist. And that's why the Nigerian Central Bank, for instance, is pushing on financial inclusion. And you're getting a whole lot of agency banking, where through your mobile phones in rural areas, you can get people to save. Okay, you need to improve that. You also need to look at the infrastructure. So an average bank is a government by itself. Water, roads. I could hazard the guess that 30 to 35% of the cost of running your business goes straight from diesel and generator. Now, if you come to England or America or even South Africa, it's plug and play. That's not the way it is. I'm going to buy 2, 3 generating sets. I'm going to have a diesel supply and what have you. So when you look at the whole of this cost and you build it onto what it takes you to get out funds from the surplus income unit, clearly when you're giving it out, it's not going to be at single digits. It just doesn't exist. So I think what we need to start to deal with, and I'm not really so bothered about fertility. One, we need to fix the infrastructure so that the cost of getting out funds is a whole lot cheaper. 2, we need to fix the credit bureau system that absolutely guarantees that when you take out a facility, you will pay it back. And when you fail to pay back, the system can identify you and deal with it. Today, what you're getting is, like Mr. Dini was talking about earlier on, someone takes out a facility in Bank A at a particular name, then goes to Bank P, it defaults, goes to Bank P, takes the money, and a whole lot of that happening. We're plugging that by the day. For instance, there's what's called the BVN, which means once you register, then you can be seen all through the system. The offer letters today will also say to you that if you default in a bank, which is perhaps standard in most parts of the world, it's guaranteed that the other banks will not loan you money, or if you have diverted some funding to other banks, will use it to defray this default. So basically, I think the cost of funding is the issue. And the biggest problem to the cost of funding is not coming from the fertility. I can spin that the other way around to say, the more you have in numbers, the bigger the strength of your labor force, and you can get a whole lot of things done. But in terms of financing in Africa, and Nigeria particularly, is a question of the fact that we need to get more people to save. And we need to get more people to save by giving them access. So we're breaking down bricks and mortars. We're trying to get to wherever they are, the nooks and crannies, to get out the money from under their beds or wherever. And that's something that the CBN has been pursuing in the last 2-3 years very aggressively. Yeah. So you have agents all over the place and what have you. So we need to get out those funding. We need to improve the infrastructure seriously so that the cost to the banks, is drastically removed. And that's why fintech is a major threat today, because then they're running on telecoms and they don't have to bother about a lot of the brick and mortar, so they can, bring down the funding. So for me, I think that that's more of what the issue is than perhaps fertility.
Okay. Interesting.
Let me add a bit of fun.
Yeah, could I just very quickly just want to ask, so obviously we're not just going to talk about Nigeria, but roughly speaking, how many or what percentage of the adult population would you say have a sort of regular digital bank account or a bank account empowered by their phone? I mean, I'm really putting you on the spot here, but as a sort of, would you
frankly, I'll say that for the banking population itself, you probably could be talking about 60-70% or more in the last 3-4 years. Wow. Because basically there have been so many channels opened up that you don't need to go into the physical structure anymore. So that's quite big. But that's for those who have their accounts already anyway. Yeah. I'm talking about those who are totally out of the system that you need to get in. But for those who are in the system already, 60-70%, maybe even a bit more, a whole lot more. Yeah.
You want to comment on that? Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I'll just take what my fellow panelist was talking on both sides. Just to add a bit of flip on that is that while one talk about the fertility part of it and one talk about creating the infrastructure, but somehow, when we look at the larger picture, and since I come from India, I always believe that women is the most important thing in terms of creating a new ecosystem. They are the one who are the saving agents for the family, for the society, for the build-up. And they are the one who are going to create the micro infrastructure for us to grow. Now, they are the one who would be the one who would create a complete new financial paradigm, which will lead to financial inclusions. And I think that is where, if the small investment starts contributing to the financial system, ecosystem, I think that is where it will build up to the larger system which you're talking about, creating a complete financial architecture and infrastructure. So that is where I was pointing out.
Rodney,
I just might make a small intervention. I agree with, I don't know your name, but I agree with Ayo. I think it's simplistic and reductionist to think it's just one single statistic. I think it might be that fertility is also a kind of related element to other aspects of development. But this point on infrastructure is really important. It also ties into the fintech theme. I think that the cost of intermediating in Africa is just absurd. Financial intermediation costs are much too high. We could say, well, let's dramatically, so I think dramatically changing the infrastructure is going to be difficult and very expensive, but I think that as we see it, from our perspective, one of the most attractive investment opportunities is in fintech in Africa. True. And providing for financial inclusion so that people can circumvent the banking system. I think that that's a gold mine, and I think we'll have two effects. People who invest in those companies will make a lot of money, and the customers of those fintech organizations will prosper massively. So I think that's the answer.
I agree with you. Yeah.
I believe questions are traditionally held to the end, but I wonder if there are any what any women think about this. We don't have any on the panel, but fertility rates. Can we go to questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
In the back is a woman.
Hi, I'm Angelica. I'm actually in the team, but something that was said by Charles Robertson did trigger me. I understand that there is probably a bit of a link with fertility rates and interest rates and just the thriving economy. What I'm not happy about is the fact that the onus is put on educating women. Actually, men can have more children than women. You can only carry a child for, 9 months? So why is it every single time that we want to talk about reducing fertility rates and just making the economy better? Why is it on women?
True.
Spot on, exactly. Maybe there's another.
Totally fair point. It's massively to do with, I was talking to a guy in Nigeria the other day, and he said his brother's the one who's producing creating a seventh child now, and he's having a go at his brother and saying, how are you going to look after them? It's just, this is partly your responsibility, obviously, as well. What the research tells us, though, is that girls who stop school at 13 are more likely to have a child at 13, 14. Girls who stop school at 16, 17 don't start the whole fertility cycle until 4 years later, and at a minimum that reduces the number of kids they have by about 1, possibly 2. So that's why it's so important. But no, it's on everybody. I totally agree.
I think there's some more questions, and there's lots of bubbling questions. Fantastic. Can we carry on with questions, or there's lots more in my book, but yeah.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but
I
think I've been provoked. What I found missing from this hypothesis linking fertility and interest rate is no consideration whatsoever of the macroeconomic framework in the country. Yep. I mean, come on, you have to look also at the rate of inflation in the country. You have to look at the exchange rate movements. You have to take the whole macroeconomic picture into account. I don't think any serious economist will really countenance this theory that we've been given. And I liked Ayo's response, also looking at the cost of intermediation. You have to take that into account. So really, this was a very simplistic hypothesis that was presented to us. And I'm sorry to say that if I was grading this paper, it would get an F.
I would give it an A because it's brought all this attention and lots of opinions in the room. So I would grade it an A. But yes, thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. I think I want to align with his analysis, and I will be very, very practical here. I am the 6th child of 10. So my father, my mother were 18 number. My father was retired when I was in primary school. So I was age of 8. From that moment, he wanted me to go to the best of schools, but I was number 6. So number 1, 2, and 3 had moved on. So it took the first person to be looking after me. So he delayed his own getting married. So I became his first child. Now his child bearing a child and co. And I was fortunate, hustled and all of that. I understand that very well, hustling and everything. And today, unfortunately, I have 5 children, but again, I could afford it. Unfortunately, I have 5. But I wanted 4, but I had the last set of twins. But where your analysis is very critical, and I agree with you, is this. Africans carry too many burdens. Let us not shy away from it. I'm not an economist, but your analysis, I'm a practical example. Today, I am married, I've got my own. I'm looking after my brother's brother's brother. my brother's children, and all of that. And this thing impoverishes us the more because I can't save. I'm looking after my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law is not lame, he's not dead, he's alive. But you have to transfer this burden over. And I think if you cut your coat according to your material, fairly, everybody will be dependent. This is where I can relate with it very clearly in the practical terms. So I believe that is linked. But the other side of it also, maybe I also can say this. I think, personally, that there is no bank in Africa. Personally, I think there is no bank in Africa. And why do I say so? When Nigeria, again as a case study, when the government pulled the public fund money through the TSA out of the banking system, it almost collapsed. And it was as if, so where was this work coming? Then in about 2-3 years after, now I see banks declare profit $3 billion. Now, from the last 1-2 weeks, they're already declaring their profit before tax. $2 billion, $3 billion. I am an entrepreneur. I'm in the energy sector, play in some spaces, and I have people. More businesses are collapsing. Please, anybody can go and check the data in Nigeria than thriving. More are collapsing. So the question is, where is this? And by the time you talk to the bankers, and I talk to decision makers in the bank, the money in the Nigerian banking system, a bank goes to borrow money to run his own bank. So the question is, if I come to Europe to borrow money, to lend to an African, then you're not a bank, you're just an agent. So that is why they cannot, and like I also said, I mean, it's come out of this. You need to look at your own markups and things like that. And I think this is where some of you with the impact bank, I mean, very laudable, unfortunately, because also, I don't know, but generally people of my age in Africa, we're also not very prudent with money. Because, see, we are coming from a very challenging period. Well, first of all, when we get money, it is consumption first, before productivity. And that is why, personally, I do not subscribe to the concept of everybody look at entrepreneurship. Majority of Africans must be taught how to know something to do. Those who are then mature their skill can be thinking about entrepreneurship. The problem, the Western world for me, because I've employed people and I have close to 100 people in my employment. Useful among them is not up to 10. But you can't sack all of them. Because some must be existing, just go to site and tell them what to do. So you become another round of education. So I think that the financial sector in the diaspora, whatever, need to look at Africa and see how did you build Asia? Because I think it's a model that is very important. And the final one is that you bankers are looking at big investment. I want to build 100 billion naira. See, people don't need more than 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. On a very light note, I'm a pastor. I'm a mini bank. Almost all the women in my church, I have to set them up on small-scale businesses. And that is why I think one of the directors was saying, because if not, people come to church every Sunday, they ask for transport, so you ask them, what can you do? Say, I can sell kerosene, I can sell this. How much? When they tell you 20,000 naira, 50,000 naira, that is what I spend to buy fuel in my own car in a month. So it's easy to empower them. And this is how I think that you financial people should look at Africa.
So I think, thank you. Yeah. All right. So, I think quite a lot over there.
So let's have some questions from the back. Please keep them short so we can get 3 questions, and then we'll go back to the panel for comments on those 3 questions. Yeah.
Good afternoon. This is Hemant Patel from Zambia. I moved here at the age of 14 in 1974, so I've been here a long time. In all honesty, I attend a lot of conferences with the African theme, where you have a lot of budding entrepreneurs and diaspora. What is not being addressed, and this is for the panel, is the concept of crowdfunding in Africa. Because yes, in this whole group, there'll be a lot of entrepreneurs, single-minded, and looking to establish themselves in Africa. What does the panel think in terms of crowdfunding in Africa? Because it's a huge success in UK. Thank you.
Can I just ask, does he know Lucien Moulinaz? I think there's people doing crowdfunding, businesses across Africa. Former colleagues of mine from Renaissance Capital are doing it. Yes, you're right. It's there for at least 6-7 years back now, I think. It's very helpful because I think that issue of small business and trying to get finance at the smallest level, I hear that again and again and again. Want to build a huge, great railway? Yeah, the Chinese will come in. Want to do a big IPO, $100 million? Yeah, Renaissance Capital comes in. What about $1,000? Where'd you get the money for that? And that, I think, is really challenging. And hopefully FinTech and this sort of panel here is exactly the right way, and crowdfunding is exactly the right way to get cash to people who need it.
Hi, my name is Tagreed Al-Sinhori. I'm a British Sudanese filmmaker, and my question is for Rodney Schwartz. It's very interesting, the kind of work you're doing in Africa and the investments you have done through impact banking. But I wondered about culture. What's your view on investing in culture and in the arts, and in particular in cinema in Africa?
Well, thank you for the question. Well, my personal view on culture is that I love it. Sadly, I have to just be honest with you. I don't remember your name, but I have to be honest with you. Most investors are not big investors in culture. So the 5 sectors that we focus on are health, education, energy and the environment, financial inclusion, and what we call ethical consumerism. We've tried on many occasions to raise funding for arts and cultural organizations. And the sad reality, and I just don't want to pretend otherwise, is that investors, by and large, are not that interested in it. Even donors are less interested in it over time than they should be. I think it's terrible for our societies that we're reducing our investment in culture here in the UK and also all around the world, but I don't want to give you any false hopes. I'm afraid that's the case.
Sorry, I just want to contribute to that a little bit because I'm actually very interested in it, especially in cinema in Africa, especially in Nigeria, because it's quite huge. 5, 6, 7 years ago, we found out in the industry that Nollywood, which is the Nigerian equivalent of Hollywood and what have you, could be close to 8% the size of the GDP. It's quite huge. And there probably could be a couple of million people working there. So it's somewhere, it's an industry where if you get proper funding into, you will affect a huge number of people. What's the problem? It's the structure. So as a banker today, I want to lend huge money to this industry, but the structure is poor. Now, what we must understand as entrepreneurs is that bankers will sit down and look at structure. It's very important. I want to see the feasibility. I want to see how it will run, how the funding will come back. I don't want to fund your brilliant idea if I cannot see the connection between bringing those brilliant ideas, between those brilliant ideas and how you bring them to life. So the biggest thing in cinema, I can tell you today, is the structure. If the structure is right, where you put in the money, you know how the talents are hired, the various locations, and how the marketing will be done, you deal with the issue of piracy, and you get your funding back, it is an extremely viable sector, not only for profit, but also for taking a lot of youths out of the road. So it's extremely very important, but the problem is the structure. And I can tell you that a lot of Nigerian banks are interested in it. Whoever cracks that first, if they crack the issue of the structure, of how to deal with it, boom, a whole lot of funding will go into it.
Okay, we'll take a couple questions here, short ones.
Thank you so much. My name is Ernest. I'm from Ghana. I think I like the idea about impact finance. And I think in Ghana, we have several examples of that form of financing in farm-based groups and other market-based groups in terms of cooperative, mobilizing women group especially, to come together and access funds as a group. And I think it is something that is very active in Ghana. The other bit is the role of technology in financing. And I think it's something that we have to pay attention to. Because I know in Kenya, in Ghana, and I think in Nigeria, mobile banking is very paramount. Yeah. And because of mobile banking, there are several hundreds of people who otherwise wouldn't have done any form of saving or alternative investment. But because of mobile, they can, it is understood that almost the number of mobile mobile phone penetration in Africa is actually more than 1:1. And we are driving on that, and it is making a lot of impact. The other bit that I think we should look at is using formal. I think when we talk about financing, we focus too much on the banks. And of course, I mean, obviously, the banks are looking at profit. And in Africa, they are not going below, especially sub-Saharan Africa, they are not going anywhere below 15% soon. I mean, from my experience, and because of the risk factors and other things. And so I think we have to look at the alternative means, maybe cooperatives and crowd financing and all that. I think we have to look at that and see how we can help. But for the debate about birth control, I think you were spot on. Thank you very much for that point. Thank you.
We'll take another 2 questions unless one of the panelists wants to interject. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say a couple of things. Actually, I come from a finance background. I worked for 2 of the top 4 audit firms before moving back to Nigeria. And I was involved in funding a major bank. We actually were going to close the second one. And I also come from a strong data analytical background. I actually represent a US big firm in a couple of things in Nigeria. Now, so I know a lot about the bank and also about virtual oil sector because I have to deal with it down to the top level. One thing on the issue of on the statistics of fertility, I think nobody should castigate it. It's absolutely the truth. And when those indices are actually long term, if you look at the long term, what the guy cannot tell you everything just in this meeting. It's a long term indices for sustainability of funding from funders. Now the issue is like peculiarity of Nigeria. It's like I work with many countries funding different type of instruments. And when it comes to issues of Nigeria, Nigeria has its own peculiarity. I had a person, I also represent even USA in funding, so down to farmers level. What the VP said, it is a major problem in Nigeria. It's absolute truth, nothing but the truth. You don't speak in front of other people, he knows what he's saying. We have a retraining might be solving many things. We have a lot of problems in management issues in Nigeria. It's not based on standards and massive issue. Other countries better in other African countries, I must say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My question is to the CEO of the Impact Investment Bank. It's going to be very short. Does the bank invest on the production of the baobab bar or on the production of the baobab flower by the women?
I think, just to repeat the question, I think we were asking whether the bars that you mentioned, was it Duna, were made from the flower of baobab or the bark, I believe. No, sorry.
I think it's made, so I don't want to, I mean, a couple of you have asked me questions, and I don't want to dominate the answers. It's the baobab fruit that is made into the health bar is the answer to your question. And the answer to your question, Dennis, from Ghana, is that I think there are many, many ways that the financial infrastructure can be enhanced in a way that supports entrepreneurship and the development of all of Africa. Ghana is a country we're particularly interested in for obvious reasons. And I've seen enterprises that look at consumer finance. I've looked at enterprises that look at how to change SME finance, so how to make it much more effective and efficient, the finance of supply chains, etc. So there's quite a lot of innovation happening, quite a lot in West Africa, and a lot of it centered on Ghana. So it's actually a market we're quite excited about.
Would you like to address on the crowdfunding?
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to the young man who asked about Ghana. So yes, we are talking again. I did mention earlier about churches. So we are trying to create cooperative for agriculture and showing them how they can add value-added products on agriculture. Things like small chilies they grow in China. These are used, for example, by L'Oreal for women's lipstick color. They get better value for that. Same with mint. Mint grows in 3 months, and you can do 14 types of mints. How do you get value? So we are trying to educate the farmers to continue farming. But these are all through the efforts of churches, because we believe the churches have a good way of commanding to the people. And I think it's a good form of education. Ghana is fantastic. Ghana has got a lot of opportunities. Through Warwick University, we are trying to do Digitalization Africa program. And again, we talked with Ghana because the Vice President of Ghana, his intention is to digitalize Ghana. And I think these are the kind of projects that are happening. But there are certain countries where there is no leadership. I'm sorry to say that the leadership is failing. Here we have very good ideas. You guys all contributed. But who is going to take notes from this meeting today to the heads of state or people who are decision makers? We are very smart. Individually, we are brilliant. Collectively, we become a bunch of idiots. And that is the point. This is where we really need to change. Think global, act local. That's what is the message. Act local. You have your own issues. You can solve your own issues. Right? We can't keep waiting and thinking about other people. We talked about, I think ECOWAS is talking about, was it in January, they wanted to come out with this euro currency of ECOWAS countries, and we will launch in January. And I said, guys, what are you talking about? We can't even get out of Brexit is becoming an issue, and you're telling me you can do currency? So currency is a great way. Then you go back to India model of demonetization. It's a great way of putting cash back into banking system, because when you convert currencies, because Naira will not exist, CD will not exist. So if you're changing that, then you have the issue with the Francophonie, which is linked to CFA. So how do you change CFA, which is linked to Euro? Why would I want to join with this thing? So there is a lot of complexities that are involved in currencies, but people are not willing to listen. The leadership is not willing to listen. We get people, the wife of the vice president came, talked at Warwick University at Africa Summit, promises, promises, promises. And when I asked a young man to say, ask her that if I'm a Ghanaian, I want to come back, what job opportunities do you have for me? And she didn't have an answer. So they all come for shopping. Majority come for shopping. And this is the big issue of leadership. And I think it is that leadership mindset that needs to change. And then only we can go forward and adopt a lot of Western ideas, a lot of things that are happening in, if you look at Ghana and Malaysia, I think they got independence same time, 63 years of independence of Ghana. What has it got to show for itself compared to Malaysia? So I think there are a lot of things that we need to learn, but firstly, we must start from home. We must not forget our cultures. I appreciate cultures, and that's why the world is so beautiful, because of different cultures.
I think just a couple more questions. Is that right? Yeah.
I think we'll do 2 more questions, and then we'll give a chance for the panelists to offer their final remarks. And I think the Malaysia-Ghana comparison is even more telling, because Malaysia also had a brutal communist insurgency for decades they had to deal with, and Ghana has, well, it's had several coups, but relative peace.
Yep.
Hey, I'm Alex, and I'm currently doing economics at UCL. So I have a question about, so I heard you guys talked about if we want to solve the issue of lack of access to funding and saving, we need to solve the, we need to improve the situation of infrastructure and credit system. Absolutely. So is the government going to be playing the main role of this issue? And can international organizations and private sectors be involved in this as well? If that's the case, what can they do about it?
Thank you. That was a good question, by the way. So just leading, I think I'm just going to move away from your question. My name is Rania. I'm also an economics student at the University of Greenwich. My question goes back to you, sir. Not that I want to put more of an emphasis on the issue of fertility, but I kind of want to understand the statistics behind your idea and some of the methodologies. And if you can actually give us an idea of some of the references as well, that would be great.
So I think we sort of do closing statements.
No,
So
Yes, you answer those questions and give a final thought.
There's one more lady there. She wants to ask one question. Let's take the last question and then we sum it up.
This lady right here?
Yeah, she looked very keen.
Let her ask the question, otherwise that will not be good.
Power to the ladies. My name is Kaprinka, and I live in London, but I work with a team in South Africa on a novel architectural and ground systems urban settlement for the Southern Africa region. And about a year ago, when I was trying to explain the concept to an MD of a very large property company in the UK, she turned around and she told me, Africa scares me. And so my question to the panel is what is Africa doing collectively to promote itself across regions, across to Europe, across the globe? And is it a collective work, or is every country individually doing its best to promote investments into Africa?
Shall I take it? Or, yes, I think if everyone sort of wraps up and answer a few of the questions.
So I'll start with what my fellow panelist Vinod was touching about, Think Global, Act Local, which was the tagline of my former bank where I was head of business India, HSBC. So HSBC coined this term, Think Global, Act Local. So thanks for reminding of my former employer. I'll take a couple of points which was raised about it. One of the thing is that why Africa is scarce. One of the things why Africa is scarce to some of the established economy or the developed economy is that because Africa is rising and they are keen to have a partnership across the world on the dignified terms. Now, some of the established country or the developed country cannot accept that. And I think that is why they are thinking that either way, maybe we can coin a complete new conspiracy theory, or maybe somehow we can try to scare the other part of the world to invest in Africa. I don't find that's a legitimate way. So for some it will scare, but for us, in terms of we as a company, in terms of what we are doing it, Africa is an entertaining market, opportunitist market, and Africa throws a lot of wonderful opportunities to us. So we don't look at Africa as a scary market. Coming back to the crowdfunding part, yes, the world is changing. The crowdfunding is possibly the new tool, but possibly both sides of stories are there about the crowdfunding. I would not name any one of them because then it will be marketing for them, which I don't intend to do it. But one needs to be extra careful about the crowdfunding because of some illegitimate practice which is happening behind the door. And I simply reiterate my first line in my first session is that please engage with any capability of financial advisory team which can help you to understand this and then bridge it up so that you can get easy funding or possibly at a much better rate. And I think we as a team, we only know one thing to do, that is investments. Either we do it directly or we simply raise funds. So I would just rest on my case. I would not come much larger before you and the lunch. Thank you.
Just in terms of references, I had quite a lot of conversations with the Professor of Demography at the LSE, Tim Dyson, who's written a fantastic book on the demographic dividend. And you've also got, actually the very first work on that was done though back in the 1950s, 40s, based on Indian data in fact. And so it's long-standing, the idea that there's a demographic dividend when lots of young people come into the market, but actually it's not a dividend until they're educated, which is why Ghana fell behind Malaysia, and Korea is the usual reference. 1960, Korea was poorer than Ghana. The difference between Ghana and Korea was that Korea had about 90% literacy after an adult literacy campaign in the 1950s. Ghana was about 20-25%. As high as that, thanks to Christian missionaries, as it happens. A lot of other countries had sub 5%, which is why Ghana's ahead of others in West Africa for that reason. So you've got Tim Dyson at the LSE, you've got this IMF paper then, was one of the very few looking at how demography and interest rates go together. Because everyone who does my job, we focus on what the market's going to do tomorrow. We cannot believe that it matters what happened 20 years ago and how many kids people had. That's why it's taken me 25 years to focus on this. But I'm happy to send you our naughtily titled report, Let's Talk About Sex and Money, which goes into the kind of 60 years of history and 200 countries worth of data that we looked at to build up this work. So if you follow me on Twitter, I'm on RenCapMan, and I still accept people just writing randomly. And I can reply to them. So at RenCapMan.
And you'll be around after if anyone wants to discuss sex and money?
Yesterday was the worst day for markets I've seen in 25 years.
Yeah.
So no.
So just to answer some of the questions. So Kaprinka, I mean, maybe some people still find Africa scary, but I think that's becoming less and less true. As I said, it's the third largest inflow of money on the impact side. So obviously, people are becoming less scared. I mean, one of the few benefits of being as old as me is that you can remember what other people found scary. People used to find India and China and lots of Asia scary, and then eventually they realized that actually they were actually quite exciting. Maybe people find China a bit scary today, but that's a different issue.
I think Italy's now.
And Italy's pretty scary, exactly. So that's one thing. The second thing, and I don't remember the name of the person who raised this point, but it was about financial infrastructure, and I detected a sort of plea that maybe there was something government can do. It was your question. I wouldn't wait for government to do anything. I also feel that too frequently governments are too closely aligned to large financial institutions, and if you're expecting or waiting for innovation to come there, you're going to have a very long wait. I think the way this is going to be resolved is that challengers, fintech firms, all those sorts of innovators are going to actually create the cheaper infrastructure that's going to enable Africa to develop more rapidly. And I think, just on a third point, and I'll make this my final comment, on crowdfunding. I think crowdfunding will have a big role to play. It's not a panacea, but I think crowdfunding, which directly connects lenders, donors, investors with causes and takes out a lot of the middlemen, I think has a big role to play. And I would encourage you to think of two elements of crowdfunding. So there's the local element of crowdfunding, so people backing local causes, so Africans supporting Africans, but I also think there's a very big market for international crowdfunding, people wanting to back projects in Africa.
Thank you. Just to take on some of the questions as much as possible, the last one on Africa and what's wrong with it, I frankly think it's a perception issue. Perception is extremely very strong, so if you have a perception of you're made to believe some things, you probably will think that's what's correct. But the reality is that there are lots of opportunities in Africa. I've lived in Africa all my life. I can't imagine living anywhere else, and I've probably practically been to all other continents as well. I think the opportunities are there. Labor is cheaper, and it's all about perception, and we have to work hard to deal with this. Secondly, on the issue of fertility, and I actually like some of the things you've said. I just think it doesn't affect, it has no real relationship between interest rates and source of financing. But I think on the social side, it's important to, of course, peg the number of children you have to be able to manage your family. I just don't think it deals with the issue of interest rate. On the issue of infrastructure, or the real things that I see as a veteran in the industry, is I think we clearly need to deal with credit bureau in Africa, which you're working on, to make sure that the database is strong, and that allows you to be able to know who you're dealing with. I think we need to deal with infrastructure. Infrastructure will not be dealt just by government. They just can't afford it. So there's going to be a lot of private, public sector partnership that will bring in some of these things alive, and people will get to pay, to pay for it. But I see some of the things that have been happening in the recent years, and I think that there is indeed a big light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think we probably could have had a whole conference on this topic, but all I would close by saying is, we talked a lot about opportunities, and I think, I'm very optimistic about, particularly how digital financial services can be delivered and helping financial inclusion and help the underbanked of the world. I would say also it's very important to consider the huge risks as well. The scams that can happen, the cybersecurity issues, fraud. These things happen all the time in the UK, and we have a great financial regulator who's on the side on innovation, but these things still happen, and I think that any discussion around how finance can help improve people's lives must take into account these things around security, protecting the retail investor. If people save money, for the first time ever, and then they lose it all to an investment scam, that's obviously a devastating thing. So I think, that's an important thing to consider as well.
All right, let's give a big round of applause to this panel and all the participants. I would actually ask the panelists to remain on stage for 1 minute. We're going to take a family photo, but I need to do a couple of housekeeping notes. We are now going to take a extended break until 2.